There is no easy way to carry out the basic functions of life. Even in the simplest bacteria, these processes need clockwork-like mechanical molecular machinery. The machines we are talking about are unique macromolecules called proteins.
And the case I want to make for you is that proteins are machines. You have 20,000 odd different types of machines in your body, and then other kinds of living organisms have other kinds of protein machines. These are real machines. That's not a metaphor. They use energy, they spin around, they pump, they act to cause force and motion. And a critical point that I want to make about how proteins function in general is they function by shape and by shape changes. And you could see that protein molecule going back and forth as different chemicals come and go.
Proteins are built by chaining together hundreds or even thousands of amino acids. Although you can chain together any odd sequence of amino acids, the order bears great significance. Different amino acids have different side chains. The complex interactions between these side chains determine the shape and function of the resulting protein. You can think of these side chains as magnets, springs, and joints. When they properly align, they drive the folding of the linear amino acid chain into a stable three-dimensional structure. But finding such an alignment is not easy, and that's an understatement. The overwhelming majority of possible amino acid chains don't fold into a functioning protein. It's estimated that the chance of finding a functioning sequence could be as low as 1 in 10 to the 77th power. Let's say I mark an atom in some way, then let it loose in the galaxy. If we consider the estimated number of atoms in the Milky Way galaxy, and we randomly pick just one atom, the likelihood of picking the correct atom on the first try would be much higher than randomly generating a functioning protein sequence. However, most biologists don't consider these odds to be a significant obstacle for the evolution of life. According to British evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins,
"It is amazing that you can still read calculations like the hemoglobin calculation used as though they constituted arguments against Darwin's theory. The people who do this, often expert in their own field, astronomy or whatever it may be, seem sincerely to believe that Darwinism explains living organization in terms of chance, single-step selection alone. Chance is a minor ingredient in the Darwinian recipe, but the most important ingredient is cumulative selection, which is quintessentially non-random."
However, when we are talking about the origins of the first proteins, cumulative selection offers little to no help at all. But let's consider his reasoning.
"I don't know who it was first pointed out that, given enough time, a monkey bashing away at random on a typewriter could produce all the works of Shakespeare. Let us limit the task facing our monkey somewhat. Suppose that he has to produce not the complete works of Shakespeare, but just the short sentence, 'Methinks it is like a weasel.' It isn't difficult to calculate how long we should reasonably expect to wait for the random computer, or baby or monkey, to type, 'Methinks it is like a weasel.' So much for single-step selection of random variation. What about cumulative selection? How much more effective should this be? Very, very much more effective. We again use our computer monkey, but with a crucial difference in its program. It begins by choosing a random sequence of 28 letters just as before. The computer examines the mutant nonsense phrases, the progeny of the original phrase, and chooses the one which, however slightly, most resembles the target phrase, 'Methinks it is like a weasel.' This goes on generation after generation. After 20 generations, the phrase chosen for breeding was. By 30 generations, there can be no doubt. Generation 40 takes us to within one letter of the target, and the target was finally reached in generation 43.
Unfortunately, this analogy is fundamentally flawed. In this program, a sentence which matches the target phrase by 40% is selected over one that matches it only by 20%. But that's not how proteins work. An amino acid chain that matches a protein sequence by only 40% does not fold into a functional shape. As a result, it does not serve any purpose for the cell and is equally useless as any other random sequence. Therefore, there is no selective pressure to preserve such a chain. In other words, it won't be selected. So there is no cumulative selection. Once you have a library of working proteins, it's feasible to get variations by slight modifications. But we have the same problem if, in order to transition from one functioning protein to another, it must go through successive, non-folding steps. To consider this condition, that a protein must fold into a functional shape, this is how we can modify the monkey program to make it truly reflect the challenge evolution is facing with completely novel proteins. Let's transform the phrase, "Me thinks it is like a weasel," to "Your behavior hath struck her into amazement and admiration," with the constraint that with each step we must get a meaningful English sentence. It's an impossible task even for a supercomputer.